Thanks for staying with us. We still have our guests here with us. We have still on this parenting issue, because one of the only time I have a fight with my husband is usually on parenting the kids, because we do things from two different divides. I'm a bit more liberal, and it's not because I'm liberal, but it's more that I go for all these conferences. You learn that you don't have to hit children. You can actually have a conversation with them. And I see I have 4 kids, and they're different. The one you can spank, I know. The one that you need to speak to, I know. But my husband doesn't understand that. He just wants everybody's getting spanked, and there's always that thing, and there's always that clash and friction on how to raise these kids the right way, especially in this season, because it's a fast-paced world. Mm-hmm. And if we keep using the techniques our parents use, it might not work. But he doesn't get that. He's like, I was raised right, you were raised right, so that's the format we're going to use for the kids. And it's always a problem.
Look, I think that's in so many African families. It's not specific to your husband. And I'm not taking his side, but I'm just telling you, it's a context of culture for us. On Saturday, I was in Abuja preaching at a church, and it was on parenting. It was a parenting conference. Yeah, and I remembered a gentleman, asking a similar question about all of this kind of approach. The reality is, we're in the 21st century. Our children are different from us. They're growing up with so much influence. It's a real struggle for them to stand. Not just by their own choices, but just the environment that they're in. So they need a lot more engagement and support from us. We have to learn how to communicate with them. We must find how to endear ourselves to them such that we're their first line of communication. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they would share their fears with their friends and they would get the wrong counsel. Mm. So we need to engage. So you're right in talking about communicating. There's also a moment to chastise a child. Mm-hmm. So your husband is right in many ways, but we must decide what is appropriate at what time, and each child is different. I have 3 sons, they're 3 nations. I would say women run multi-nations. Yes. So you must run 4 nations in your house. Well, by the time you count your husband, it becomes 5.
5 nations.
So it's really for us to try and understand the nature of each child. Yeah. Find the way of communicating with each child, because it's different. The way to get through to one, don't use the same rule for all our children. And honestly, I don't know that we can do it without praying. Because we really need divine help for this time and season. Yes. We have to be very discerning, and women are better at that because we have greater intuition. So you must be able to sense things before they happen, and you must see a trend that you can nip in the bud as much as you want to love, but also as women, we mustn't overlove in a way that they take advantage of it. Right. Now, what is also important for us is, as husband and wife, we must act like a team with the children. Otherwise, they'll play us. Yeah.
Okay. Easy.
So we need to play both.
Yeah. So this is so easy because it just moved to where I was headed, like the faith-based and the spiritual aspect of the marriage and the home. What do you think, in the sense that, because I know you're a very faith and very spiritual person, in terms of everything that you've done, your decisions everything, it's hedged in the word. So what do you think about a situation where, let's say a parent or parents are pastors, and then the kids are dealing with certain things, even though they grew up in the word, and they feel the fear of certain things happening with them in terms of maturing, in terms of adolescence, to have those conversations, like sexuality, to have those conversations with you as with the pastor parents. And then most times you find out that some kids that grew up in that aspect, when they're out or in the school or universities, they act out differently because they just feel like, oh, I've been caged. Or so what kind of relationship would you advise parents to create a balance where children can make every decision, no matter what comes out of them in terms of peer pressure, that they stand in their decisions to say, these are my family values?
You know, the thing, I'm a pastor and I'm a parent. But the reality is, your pastoral calling is on one side. Your parenting assignment is on another side. And we can't afford to mix them up. We mustn't abandon our responsibility as a parent because of our calling as a pastor. 2, the challenge is people tend to judge the children of pastors harshly. Everybody has a view, especially when he's a church pastor, you know, a lead pastor in a church or something. They are accountable to everybody before they make one move. The mistakes normal children can make that parents will walk through with them, the children of a pastor don't have that. So the pressure is a lot. And don't forget, they are still children. And living under that kind of pressure and everybody having an opinion about their life is not healthy for any child. So as parents who are in that position, we have the responsibility to protect our children. We must be able to build the same kind of relationship we were talking about with them in a way that they can, you know, build their own faith for themselves. You can't hold my children at the level of my faith because they are walking their own journey and they're going to be accountable for it. And if the parents don't speak up to defend their children, others will take advantage of that. You know, so we must protect our children and find how to balance it.
But I have seen this whereby when I traveled, when I was in Nigeria, I saw the pastor. Then I traveled abroad and I saw the kids, and they are two different worlds. The kids are being very Americanish, you know, dressed very like normal, like, you know, and I'm thinking, are you sure you're Pastor XYZ's child? In my mind, after they say it out. And that's one of the confusion church members always have, where the kind of standards you force us to adhere to, especially when we're in Nigeria. When we see your kids don't have to, and that there's always that issue. So as a pastor, how have you ever, do you ever have to maneuver around this?
Look, if children are children, and they will express themselves depending on the generation that they're in. And as parents, we have to find how to deal with our own children in their way. Like I said, it takes children walk through their own journey of faith. And if you don't allow them some sense of liberty and self-expression until they own their faith and they make their own decisions, all you will have is resentment. And their children will totally cut off from their parents over time just because they do not have, you know, they feel caged. So there is a thin line that you need to walk through, and parents must be, I think as pastors that are parents, we must be open to talk about even our own challenges. We should stop acting like we're perfect or that our children are perfect. Because they're not. They're children, you know, and they will have their own challenges as people in the church will have challenges. So we need to be open and honest with our congregations.
When you were answering the issue of, you know, you gave the example of the plane seats for kids, I was wondering, you know, these days parents don't even have clarity what they want as parents. You know, you said we had to be deliberate parents, and I'm wondering, when you yourself don't even know what exactly your family value is, you know, you're confused and you have to now grow another human properly. How do you first determine what your family values are? Do you have to, you know, in some marriages, like Maria mentioned, there are clashes. You have a clarity maybe because of your background, what your own family values are from maybe how you were raised, but you're clashing with a new family now because you're married, and you don't necessarily want to adopt everything you've seen there. And so you have another individual adult that you have to then sit and deal with that. So how do you really, you have clarity on what your goal as to your child's outcome is?
You know, there's something the Bible says. The Bible says, can two walk together except they agree? What does that mean? How do you marry a guy that your core values are not aligned? Those are questions we must resolve. Remember the first question I started with, the real issue starts from before we get married, in choosing who we marry. Because by the time you get married, there must be commonality of values that are core. And then you apply that to the children in various ways based on your pattern of influence. Where you're not sure, the parents can have a conversation about it, that look, we shouldn't do this and this is why. We should do this. Sometimes, yes, you will disagree. Everybody doesn't agree all of the time. But at the end, if your core values are the same, you're likely to agree on the things that are most important. And then you will trust. Of the two, there's always one that is stronger at one side or the other. You have to then trust each other's strengths and allow the strength of each couple, each member of the team to be for the benefit of the children. The intentionality is key and responsibility is key.
Okay.
If you know that what you want is not right for the children, the parent that holds the view must make a case with the other parent until they reach. So that you're not speaking against each other. The children will play you once you do that.
Ma'am, you know that sometimes also it's not about the children, it could be the in-laws. So you're dealing with your husband, but also sometimes your husband is saying things, and you know that there are people, this is not him speaking, they are influencing him. You may even come to a decision or an agreement, and then he comes back because he's changed his mind, because someone who he respects, maybe a mother or whoever, an in-law, has changed his mind. How do you deal with that?
You know, I'm smiling. Because you know what? Every woman must know how to play to win in her own home. And playing to win in your own home is about wisdom and understanding. When I say wisdom, you know what you want to achieve. You also know the terrain. You know your mother-in-law, you know your father-in-law, you know your in-laws, you know your husband. Work out your own salvation in your own situation and work out how you achieve what you want with your own children. You know, sometimes they're going to say something, you're going to say, yes, ma, thank you. You listen, oh, it's true, mama. Do they live in your house with you? No. Then you're going to find ways.
On this one. Sorry to interrupt. So I understand that sometimes you have to stoop, but there's times where you're let's say you have a strong personality. You're dealing with strong personalities. Father-in-law is strong, mother-in-law is strong. They're commanding and demanding. I had an instance, my rule growing up was no child under 12 sits on the passenger side of the car. And one time my husband was going to take his mom out, and I was still trying to embed that.
It's a safety rule.
Is it? Thank you, ma. My father being a safety, just used to make it a rule. So I said, my daughter, I was trying to embed it in her. She was just 3 at the time, and I said, she doesn't have to sit here. We had agreed. And on this particular day, my mother-in-law was at the back seat, and my husband was like, so that she can comfortably sit, she should sit in the passenger side. I was like, why did the rule just change? It wasn't a time I wanted to stoop to allow
safety first.
So I insisted. I said, that's a safety rule. She goes to the back.
But I agree with you.
Grandma. And so we had a clash outside in front of my...
But do you realize it's not what you said, it's about how you say it. So there's A, there's B of the same thing. There's Pele, there's Pelejo. So when you look at the scenario, his mother is there and he's taking a position. He wants to impress his mom that is the head in that situation. If you are going to say, she can't sit there, you're going to say, you know that you're putting her life at risk. The grandmother does not want to put the grandchild's life at risk. So when you lay the reason why, understanding at that point, what is important to the man, respect. What is important to his mother, to see that his son is respected in that moment. But you have a goal to achieve. You're going to say, sorry, my husband, she cannot sit there. You know that it's a safety situation. If, for instance, you stop suddenly for a child, the chances of death and all of that, even the grandmother will learn that at that point, say, she has to go to the back. His tone, his language, and his attitude. It makes all the difference. And we have to, like I said, every woman knows her own husband. Work out how to achieve.
I'm about to go into business. Amaka, do you want to
I want to ask one more question. Because this is a question that, you know, the norm usually would be, not like the norm, but like what we see is that, you know, couples fight, there's abuse, there's one thing and one thing, then people now fall out. But how about a scenario where there's nothing wrong? He's not abusing you. He's a provider. She's playing her own role. But then one party falls out of love. And they are living like roommates. They are unhappy. The environment is not toxic for the kids, because whether I like it or not, even though they are not quarreling and anything, you can just tell that there's no love within that home anymore. So what happens when, because it's not, maybe people most times feel like it's not something they can deal with, but you just fall out of love with someone that was supposed to be the love of your life.
And you just walk out.
What happens in that scenario?
Yeah, I don't know about people just falling out of love. Okay, because marriage is a covenant. It's a commitment. It's not about your convenience. It is that we have a divine contract that we will walk through these seasons of our lives together. And it's simply that. When a lot of times people fall into the situation you call fall out of love because they wandered into things they shouldn't. And then the distraction that they get into makes them believe that these things have happened. Honestly, love is hard work. You have to nurture it.
Yeah.
You must invest in it. You must be intentional about caring for each other. You must be intentional about creating time, forgiving each other, creating time for one another, celebrating one another, you know, honoring yourselves, loving, supporting. Love is hard work. It's an intentional work. It's not, it's not the feeling.
If it's not that I wanted to move, I would have begged that you should repeat that seasons of life.
Let me go on a short break. When we come back, because we can't have you here and not talk about how to business. Because women want to create wealth. We are empowered these days and we want to learn a few things from. Let's go on a short break. When we come back, we'll move into how we can build a successful and sustainable business. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.